Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Can I just get a quick confirmation? Everyone hears me okay, please?
Sound great.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So everyone, I wanted to welcome you to this webinar here today. We're going to be talking about the 2020 Virtual Hackathon. And yes, one more virtual thing. I'm sure people are getting a little tired of all these virtual things we're doing these days. But hey, the way I look at it is better virtual than nothing. We all love SIIM, and I personally love the hackathon. I'm sure most of you who have tuned in today have the same feelings. So it's better that we have it virtual than not have it at all. Now, today, I wanted to introduce, some of you are returning hackathon participants. Some of you might be new or interested in knowing more about the SIIM hackathon. So today, we're just generally going to introduce what the hackathon is like and explain how a virtual hackathon is going to look like versus our normal face-to-face hackathon at the SIIM annual meeting. So very quickly, I'm going to recap, what's the deal with the SIIM hackathon? What's going on here? So really, the way I think about it is we basically provide you with kind of like the three pillars that help you with hacking. So on one side, we have the servers and the APIs. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to evangelize new modern standards in imaging and imaging informatics and health IT. So at the moment, we have FHIR Release 7, also known as Release 4, also known as version 4. We have DICOM Web. Now, DICOM Web is not actually versioned, but we do try to use an implementation that keeps up with the standard and new developments. We also have a reference implementation of IHE SOL. This is a relatively new standard. It stands for Standardized Operational Log of Events. And we'll cover these in more detail in a moment. So this is what we call the platform. And in our case, the platform is hosted in the cloud, which also means that it's live 24/7, 365. So even though we have a hackathon event, the infrastructure is always in place for you to hack at any time you want throughout the year. Now, the only disclaimer here is to be able to use this, you have to have a valid API key. The good news is it doesn't cost any money. Anyone can get an API key, and that's actually something we will cover today. We also provide data sets because early on in the journey of a hackathon, we realized that randomized data only gets you so far. You need that cohesiveness of a real-life-like data set. So in our case, we have a miniature data set that's been created by collaboration of clinical people with clinical backgrounds like radiologists, representing 5 patient personas. And the idea of this data set is it stitches clinical FHIR data with DICOM images. So some people might be familiar with tools like, for example, Cynthia that can generate synthetic FHIR data. The gap with these tools is that none of them actually marry the FHIR data with the DICOM with the DICOM images that kind of paints the whole picture of a patient record. So that's the advantage with the SIIM data set. It's a smaller data set, but it gives you that real life feeling, a believable story and narrative behind each patient. Now, of course, our infrastructure also allows you to upload your own data. And just to guard against any problems or storage issues, we do perform a nightly reset. So as part of our nightly reset, we bring back our data set, but then everything else gets wiped out. And this is true for both FHIR, DICOM Web, and IHE SOL. Last but not least, the last pillar we bring to the table with the SIIM hackathon is the community. The feeling that you're part of a community is, of course, a big one. But here we've gone above and beyond to try and make this really easy for anyone who's new to this. Something a lot of you may have heard us say multiple times in the past is you don't have to be a developer or a computer person specifically to attend the hackathon and be productive. We welcome people from all walks of life. So one of the things we provide here is what we call 60-second start guides. The idea of coming in, not knowing a whole lot about how these APIs work and not really having prior experience maybe with a lot of the previous standards. And you can essentially look at our documentation and you go in 60 seconds to having your quote unquote hello world example. Like here, I just made a FHIR call and I actually got the response back, that rush you feel when you've accomplished something like this. So this is something we provide, and this is actually something I'm going to show today later in my presentation. Beyond the 60-second guides, we also have even more documentation on how to do how to tackle some niche cases. As an example, off the top of my head, if you had an image, say a JPEG or a PNG, that you wanted to encapsulate in DICOM using DICOM Web, we actually have documentation that shows you how to do that. So it's not something that is necessarily easily available elsewhere. And last but not least, we also provide mentorship. And new this year, so in previous years, we had our Code Heroes, which is technical mentorship. New this year is domain expertise. So these are people who have extensive industry knowledge. Some of them are clinical, some of them have worked for vendors, but these are people who understand clinical workflows really well. These are the kind of people that when you're contemplating a new project for the hackathon, and you're wondering, like, is the idea I've got in my mind a real problem, or is this something I'm just imagining? These are the people you could go and turn to and ask, hey, is this a real problem, or is it just, is it just something I've got in my mind that doesn't really make sense in real life? So they'll help guide you, point you in the right direction of, well, here are some things you could work on, here are some ideas, help you frame the problem and the value proposition of your solution in a more appealing way. And of course, during the hackathon, we're going to be having our live chat and brainstorming sessions. We're going to cover those in more details, but again, the idea with live chat is that everyone is there exchanging ideas, helping solve each other problems. And then at the beginning of the hackathon, we have a kickoff call, which is the brainstorming session where everyone kind of brainstorms together. The one thing you do not see on my slide is that the biggest thing with the SIIM hackathon is that the theme here is collaboration, not competition. I mean, we encourage a little bit of competitiveness, but really, this is all about people coming together for the benefit of imaging informatics and healthcare in general. That's what the hackathon is all about. And this is something we're also going to, you'll see this is reflected in the judging criteria for how the hackathon projects get judged and how the winners are chosen. So, virtual hackathon, what does this actually mean this year? So obviously SIIM has gone virtual, and we figured this is a unique opportunity for us to try something different with the hackathon. This is essentially a clean slate. We figured a virtual hackathon is a unique opportunity to attract categories of people that usually can't afford to travel to SIIM. So for example, if you think about university students and college students, this is a great opportunity to get them involved in the domain, know that there are other people who they can connect with, make them feel valuable as far as being able to solve real world problems, get them hooked while we still can. So this is a really nice opportunity. The one thing that's going to be a bit different about the virtual hackathon is that it is actually going to run before the annual meeting. So usually hackathons have been weaved into the annual meeting. So the idea is you attend sessions and you'll be able to hack in between sessions, or maybe do some hacking at night and so on and so forth. Not in this case. We figured people are probably stuck at home, maybe have kids and so on and so forth. So we figured we'll just run it before the annual conference, just avoid any conflict, people having to choose between attending sessions, educational sessions at SIIM and hacking. The hackathon, because it's decoupled from the annual meeting this year, does not actually cost anything to participate. So you do not have to have a SIIM annual meeting registration to participate in the hackathon. The only thing you need to do is just attend the calls that we're going to be announcing, and of course have an API key, and then the rest of it is completely free. As I said, because the hackathon runs before the conference, we realized that with less distractions, having to go to different meetings and different sessions at SIIM, we've compressed the hackathon to make it a bit of a shorter duration. So the hackathon this year is actually going to be running for exactly 28 hours. From a timeline point of view, this is what the hackathon is actually going to look like this year. So we will start with a kickoff call, and this kickoff call will be held via Zoom meeting. That's going to be on Friday, June 19th, from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is the same kickoff meeting that we usually have had in the past with previous hackathons. It's the idea of all the participants coming together, the code heroes, domain experts, new for this year. We all come together, we brainstorm our ideas, think of different interesting problems to solve. And this is probably one of the most exciting parts of the hackathon, where people are coming together. Like you could feel the energy in the room, people coming up with ideas and feeding the excitement, feeding off each other. It is really cool. Now, you notice this is on a Friday, so then you have the weekend. We're not really expecting anyone from hacking over the weekend, so we don't want to take your weekend away. Of course, if you're really absolutely determined to start hacking, by all means. But the idea was to give people the weekend to develop their ideas further, come up with a project plan, consult with the mentors that we have lined up, again, code heroes and domain experts, and also form teams. One thing, of course, we're really hoping to see this year is people forming teams from across disciplines, from across geographical areas. Just encourage that cross-pollination, if you will. So the hackathon then begins on Monday, June 22nd at 10 a.m. That's when the official go signal is fired. At that point, we're going to have all communication in Discord. Now, it's not to say you can't use Discord before. Discord is available, and we're going to talk in more detail about Discord. But that's where we're going to be doing our chatting, textual, and also verbal communication. So we're going to have the concept of a check-in meeting. For those of you who come from developer backgrounds, this is kind of akin to a stand-up meeting, where basically it's a quick meeting. Everyone talks about what they're doing, there are any roadblocks, and people can then step forward and offer help, and so on and so forth. So we're planning to have 3 check-in meetings. The first one being at 10 a.m., which is, again, the go signal for the hackathon. So we'll have a check-in meeting. Everyone talks about their ideas, their plans, and then we start. And then 4 p.m. Eastern time on Monday. And then the last one is at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, June 23rd, which is the last day of the hackathon. The hackathon itself actually runs until 2 p.m. on Tuesday. So after the last check-in meeting, you'll have about 4 hours or so. The hackathon activities we expect will wind down between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So not only are people finishing up their projects, those who actually decide that they would like to present at the showcase will now have a chance to start working on their demo, maybe a couple of slides if you'd like, working on the narrative, how you want to present your problem, your solution, so on and so forth. So again, you wind down, prepare for the showcase. So that's the demo and presentation. And then Tuesday, June 23rd, from 2 to 4 p.m., we're going to have the project showcase. And again, this is very similar to how we've done it in previous years. Different teams who are interested in showing off their works will take the stage. In this case, it's virtually, so figuratively speaking. They'll take the stage, they'll show off the projects they've been working on, state the problem they thought of, their solution, how they're utilizing the different APIs, etc. We're going to have our judging panel. So we usually have a judging panel of 5 judges, and the 5 judges will also have a chance to ask each team some questions post the presentation. And the judging panel in this case comes from different walks of life. So some of them are clinical, some are technical, some of them from a research background, and so on and so forth. So the judging panel will then pick the winner, and then we're also going to have the audience, people who are attending out of curiosity, also pick a winner. So there'll be 2 winners, the hackathon winner and then the Audience Choice Awards. Both of these awards will actually be announced in the membership meeting, the SIIM membership meeting, which is Thursday, June 25th at 5:45 Eastern time. The participants of the hackathon do not require some registration to be able to attend this meeting. We'll actually share an invite with hackathon participants just for this one meeting. So just to confirm one thing that maybe wasn't very obvious on the timeline before. So the kickoff call, which is Friday, and the project showcase call Tuesday will take place using Zoom. And then we'll be distributing the invitation for those later. All the other communication, so in between, once we're done with the kickoff on Friday all the way to Tuesday, everything else will go to Discord. So this is where we're going to be, doing chatting. There will be different rooms, as you'll see in a moment, for code heroes, different rooms for domain experts. And then we'll also have capability of doing voice chats, screen sharing, etc. I'm actually going to show that in just a moment. All right. So for anyone interested in joining us on Discord, again, whether you're actually going to participate in the hackathon or not, you're more than welcome to tune in anyway. It may be interesting to see what kind of activities go on, or maybe you're someone with a clinical background, you'd also like to kind of offer your insights. We welcome everyone. So you see on my slide here, there's the Discord link. So this is the invitation link. Anyone can go in and sign up and be part of our space. I'm going to show a demo in just a moment. And then for anyone that prefers to just use it on their phone or mobile device, I've got the QR code here. So that's just the invitation link just from my slide right here. Okay, so let's do a quick Discord demo here. I'll just show this off so everyone sees what it's like. I've zoomed it in. Now, the structure that we have in place here is not 100% final, but it's definitely getting there. We just started setting up this the other day. So you see, Discord is very similar to products that some of you may have used, like Slack or Microsoft Teams. You've got the idea of having channels, and then within the channel, you've got people chatting. And then in these chats, you can actually start threads. Hey, Alex. It's all real time, of course, which is the beautiful part about it. And then you can react with emojis and so on and so forth. So an example could be someone, coming here saying, hey guys, I'm trying to figure out how to do this one thing in Fire. Can anyone help me, please? And then someone responds like, hey, let's talk. And then they take the conversation, privately. So direct messages or private messages, or maybe even jump on a call together. That's always an option. So for example, here, my friend Alex right here. So I could, for example, start a private chat with Alex by clicking on his profile. We could also start a voice call as well. All right, and then we've got Nikki saying hello. So we will have the general channel, which is kind of like the lobby for everyone. And then you're also going to see that we have Code Heroes channel. So this is kind of where the Code Heroes will be hanging. People can be talking here about technical questions, technical problems, and then domain experts. So that's where we've got like workflow questions, clinical questions, that kind of thing. We may end up having more channels in the future. We haven't fully figured it out. Also, individual teams are more than welcome to just go ahead and create their own channels so they could chat among each other. Again, it's very flexible infrastructure. And then you notice that the Discord has got the concept of a voice channel. So right now we only have the one, which is called General. So this is a channel where everyone basically jumps on, and it's an open line, and everyone can just talk. So it's essentially like a conference call. You can create more of these channels. So this is where we will be having the check-in meetings, the 3 check-in meetings that I talked about earlier. Okay. I think that's it for Discord. If anyone has more questions about this, we could definitely discuss that in more detail. So again, it's brand new this year. We're trying it out. We previously have used Slack, but this year we're going to try Discord. A couple of things I will show very quickly that are interesting Discord hacks are the ability of notifying people. So one option could be to use @here. So @here will tag everyone who's online at that given moment. So like you see here, I've got 7 people who are online. So @here will actually notify these 7 people, but not the ones who are offline. If for whatever reason you've got something that requires everyone's eyeballs, you can actually go @everyone, which will ping the 7 people you see online my screen, plus the 4 people who are offline. Now, the people offline, depending on how they use Discord, they may have it on their phone, so they may actually get a phone notification. Or if they don't, they'll probably get an email from Discord saying, hey, someone tagged you, someone maybe needs help or something like that. So this is pretty helpful, and again, will hopefully ease the communication. Now, just for humor purposes, don't forget that on Slack, you also have the ability to do animated GIFs. So yeah, please go ahead and enjoy yourselves. I think there was one posted somewhere here. So there's mine. Welcome to the team, because who doesn't like minions? Okay. Alrighty, back to slides. Okay, we talked about the idea of API keys. So requesting one is something that you would do from SIIM.org. So to begin with, you have to have an account on SIIM.org. And you don't have to be a SIIM member to get a SIIM account. You can actually get an account as a guest. I'll show that very quickly here so people know what it's like. So if I bring up Chrome right here in incognito mode, and I go, I think it was join now. It's a little slow. Sorry, I should have had this prepared in advance, but I forgot. So when this loads, you're actually going to see the option of, okay, I'll just put it aside and we'll come back to it in just a second. So you will see the option of being able to sign up for an account. Once you have an account and you're logged in with your account, you have to sign in the agreement. Now, there are multiple links that lead to this agreement. I have put a handy dandy link in my slides here that you could follow. But if you were just to look for the hackathon through the navigation, or you just go to siim.org/hackathon, you're going to see this link as part of all the text that we have there that explains how the hackathon works and how to do all of this. Once you've signed the agreement, that sends me a notification, and I usually have to manually issue a key for each person. I have it on my slides here that's within 48 hours. It's usually a lot faster. I'm usually about it within 12 hours you'll have it, but just I don't want to overpromise and deliver here, so we'll call it 48 hours. So this is loaded now. This is the screen where you can sign up for an account with SIIM, and you can see right here under individual, you have the option of being a non-member guest. So this basically gives you a free account that's just good enough to get the API key. Okay. Now, I'll show the form so that people know what it looks like. So here is our hackathon form. If you'd like, you could read the text. We're mostly just making sure that you don't do anything silly, like, for example, uploading PHI to our servers. And that's the reason why we reset them every night anyway, just to be sure. So yeah, all you got to do is just go to the bottom, accept, put in your different numbers, and then submit, and should be good to go. As I said, once I receive the notification, I usually get these keys issued within typically about 12 to maximum 24 hours. Sorry, 24 hours. When you have your key, so once you get that email from me saying, hey, welcome, this is your key, you got to make sure that you use this key for any API request. So whether you're dealing with Fire, DICOM Web, or Soul, got to make sure you use that key. And the usage of the key is really simple. You're just going to add an HTTP header to your request, and that HTTP header should say API key, colon, and then the actual value of your key, which is, it looks like a hash. Whether you're using curl, you're using Postman, or a different programming language, just make sure that you send the header and you should be okay. Now, for those of you who may like things a little bit more visual, if you're a Chrome user, you can get an extension called mod header, which is an extension that allows you to add custom headers, HTTP headers to your requests. And I've got a screenshot here that actually shows what it looks like. So here's an example. Now, this is not a real key. It's a key that's active right now for the orientation session, but it's going to be deactivated after the call. So make sure you use your own key. But basically what you could do is you could use mod header right here. You could put in your API key, and you set a filter for the URLs where this should be sent. So you don't want to be sending this header to every single website that you use on the internet. Your key is for you and only for you to use. But yeah, this is basically what happens. And then now, if for whatever reason you do not want to use curl or Postman, or if you want to use the GUI versions of the Fire API or the DICOM Web API, this will enable you to do that. And that's actually something that I'll show in a demo later today. All right, so we talked about having to send the key to be able to use our APIs. One thing that we want to explain is our APIs are all actually sitting behind what we call an API gateway. So the gateway is a centralized place that proxies the calls to the different implementations of the APIs, allows us to have nice, pretty URLs like the ones you see on my screen. And it's the same layer that checks that everyone who's making a request actually has a valid key. So the API endpoints, as you can see on the screen, are hackathon.sim.org/fire for Fire, /DICOM-web for DICOM-web, and /Soul for IHE-Soul. Once again, you got to make sure you always include your API key in every request, whether it's get, post, put, delete, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Just make sure that you're always including API key. Otherwise, you're going to get an error saying missing or invalid API key. Okay? All right, so we're going to do a quick demo here just to show what these look like. I've got Postman up and running here. Now, Postman is one of my personal favorite tools for doing these kind of requests. So what you see here in Postman is I've got a tab. It kind of works like a browser where you can have multiple tabs. And then you can put in your request. In this case, I'm just searching DICOM Web for studies with patient name Joe SIIM. So that's part of the SIIM data set. And then here I've got my headers. So as you can see, there's an API key. And this API key is just hackathon orientation session. Again, that's just valid for today's demo. And then I'm specifying that I'm accepting images in DICOM and JPEG, which is not actually relevant here because I'm doing text search. But yeah, so you can just simply search like this. So I send it and I get my response back. Now, of course, in this case, it defaults to JSON, but DICOM Web actually allows you to retrieve information in XML if you prefer. So that's an option. That's all part of the documentation. And if anyone has any issues with this, please let us know. We're more than happy to explain this in more detail. One of the features that I really like with Postman, and I apologize, I have to figure out how to do this because it's been a while now, is Postman has an option for code generation. Somewhere here, it's been a while. Oh, there, code. My apologies, it's been a while. So the nice thing about code generation is that you can use the Postman GUI to figure out the nuances of how to make an API call. And then once you figure it out, you can take that to whatever programming language you like and use it as is. So here in the code generation, let's say, for example, I'm a PHP guy. I can go to PHP, and depending on which library of PHP I like, I could just choose it. So let's say, for example, I like to use curl within PHP. So here it actually gives me ready-made code that will replicate exactly what I just did in Postman, but in PHP. So I could take that and plug it into my application or my hackathon project, and voila, it just works. The same is true for a bunch of languages. If you're a Java person, you've got Java. If you're JavaScript, Node.js, Python, it's all there. It just makes it really, really easy to do. All right. Okay, so one thing I wanted to show is some basic interactions with DICOM Web. Again, the documentation is on the website, and I'll also show what that looks like. But here you saw me making a super quick example call to DICOM Web where I searched for a patient name. Here I have another example where I'm actually retrieving a fire imaging study. Now, in this case, I happen to know the identifier of that imaging study, so I just called it by that identifier. There are ways you could also do searches in Fire, by things like name or patient ID or MRN, that kind of stuff. You see here, there's the response from Fire. So makes it really, really easy. Here is another example where I'm looking at the instances within a DICOM study. So trying to retrieve instance level information versus just a list of studies, which is the first example I showed you. And of course, in DICOM Web, I can flip this to accept. Oops. XML, let's try that. So there you go. So that actually flipped it to XML here. I'll just flip this to XML so I get the syntax highlighting. So here, this is now done in XML. And if I go back to my Fire example, I could do the opposite, where I could actually specify accept text JavaScript or application JSON, and it'll actually return the data in JavaScript instead. Okay. The other thing I wanted to show is the GUI. So part of the reason why we covered mod header in Chrome was to show you what the GUI looks like. So it's something I've got right here. My apologies, right here. Okay. So if you go to hackathon.sim.org/fire-overview, you're greeted with this interface from the Happy library, which is what you use. And this interface will actually give you a potential different way of introspecting data. It's like in case you want to find out what imaging studies are in the system, you see here there's a count of 22, and I can go in here and I could do GUI-based search. This is available as a fallback. I mean, obviously, not every single Fire implementation you're going to have in real life is going to have something like this. but this is just available to make your life easier, just for people who are getting started. So if I was to click search here, as you can see, this is now going to return my list of studies, and then I can actually read through these lists of studies and perform searches later using identifiers and so on and so forth. We similarly have a GUI for Orthanc, which is what powers our DICOM web implementation. So if you go to hackathon.sim.org/VNA, you'll be greeted with this interface here. So this interface allows you to search by patients here, or I can just simply click all patients. And then if I scroll down somewhere in here, there are some patients. So it's, I think, paginated. If I filter by SIIM. So here we've got some of the SIIM patients showing up here. And then this actually allows you to click through, discover what studies they have. You can download a copy of the study. Now, for the record, the entire SIIM data set is actually on GitHub. If anyone is interested, I think the links are in our documentation. I can also send it to anyone who needs it. So you can just download them from there. If I continue to drill through here, if I get to the series level, it'll also allow me to launch it in the web viewer, where I can actually see the images, which unfortunately in this case not super interesting. So let's try a different one here. Let's try this one. Not that interesting either. But anyway, so you can trust me on this one. You'll actually see images in this case. Something is not working exactly right. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to cover is once you've signed up on sim.org, besides signing the API agreement to get an API key, we also have a group or a group portal within the SIIM website. So I've got the link in my slides. You'll see that in a moment. Everyone, once they have an account, can self-register for this group. So the first time you bring it up, it will say, hey, you're not part of this group. There should be a link somewhere that says, I'd like to be part of the group. And the next time you go to that group, it just works. It doesn't actually require any manual intervention or any approvals by anyone. And then once you've made it to the group, you'll see here's where we have the documentation that I talked about. So very quickly here, it talks about FHIR, DICOM Web. It talks about the different URLs you need to know. It also mentions mod header for Chrome, the one I mentioned before. Here we've got some introductory documentation to what REST APIs look like, how they work. The 60-second starting guides I talked about for FHIR and DICOM Web. We actually have a list of hackathon project ideas. So in case anyone is coming in and like, okay, this is cool, what can I build with this? We've got some interesting ideas for you to explore. And these ideas range all the way from like super advanced and totally out there to like very basic. So we have ideas involving AI, machine learning. We have ideas that involve blockchain, but we also have super simple ideas of, here, pretend you're creating an EMR client that's image enabled. So your choice, what end of the spectrum you want to be on to try something. Of course, if you have your own idea, that's something we absolutely welcome. Bonus points for utilizing additional APIs. So Firecast is an example, IHE-Sol, as I mentioned. We have cool APIs and libraries that we also recommend that we've mentioned here. So like, for example, the OHIP viewer is a pretty cool application, 100% open source. Cynthia for generating additional information, like if you want to load test your FHIR implementation or test pagination, it's a pretty cool tool, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to cover the entire list here today. Okay, the Hackathon Committee has actually put on a webinar a few years ago where we featured some of these open source tools. So if you're ever interested in learning more about the open source tools, please go ahead and attend that webinar. Okay, so here's the example of FHIR introduction. So this is the 60-second guide. There's a DICOM Web. And let's see, we covered this one. So here's a list of ideas of hackathon projects that I mentioned. And then, of course, last but not least is the hackathon webpage on SIIM. So if you go to sim.org/hackathon, this is where you're going to land. And when you click on Learn More, you will find out more information about the virtual hackathon this year. You see the link here to sign the agreement. And we talk about the different sessions that are involved in the hackathon. So orientation is the one we're having today. Kickoff is the next one, which is Friday on June 19th. All right. So here is the link to the hackathon group portal. So again, this is where the documentation resides. As I mentioned, you can self-register for this. It does not require any approvals, any manual approvals by anyone. I was going to give a demo, which I did already, so you've kind of seen what it looks like. And again, at any point, if anyone has any issues or problems, please feel free to get in touch. And we'll talk about how to get in touch in just a moment as well. I want to give a shout out to the kind people that have agreed to be our mentors. Now, this list is as of yet. We're still working on recruiting more, but I'd like to thank the following gentlemen here. So Arsene Seaman, Christopher Tolan, Clifton Lee, Diego Angolo, Jim Wetzel. And then for domain experts, we have Brad Generu, Chris Hafey, Simon Raskovsky, Stacey O'Connor. Again, so far we're working on recruiting more, but these people have generously agreed to volunteer their time to help out with the hackathon, and they're generally very accomplished people, lovely people to talk to, very informative, helpful, collaborative. So again, we really appreciate their continued support over the years for the hackathon. All right, I promised I'd tell you more about judging and competitiveness with the hackathon. So what you see here is exactly what we share with our judges for how to judge the judging criteria. With one more blurb that I usually like to add in person, both to participants and to the judges. So I'll go through these and I'll cover the blurb in a moment. So we try and judge based on 4 categories. So innovation and originality. So is this trying to come up with a new cool way of doing things, or is it maybe improving an existing workflow? How original is it from existing solutions on the market? Practicality and usefulness. So is this solving a real problem with real potential? Is this something people actually find useful? Would it help with real world impact on improving patient care? Utilization of APIs. Again, we're trying to evangelize the new APIs, new, cooler way of doing things. So bonus points for making use of Fire, DICOM Web, and or Sol, especially if you can mash up the information between the APIs. Again, it's all about showcasing that these APIs really encourage interoperability and make it much easier to develop applications and worry more about business logic than the nuances of being able to tune into clinical and imaging data. And then overall, for sort of like a catch-all, so for cool applications that may not necessarily fit the other categories, this is sort of like an open-ended category. You know, some years we've had people develop games that were pretty cool concepts. You know, they may not necessarily fit, you know, some of the categories, but still a really cool concept. Now, I promised I'd add the one blurb. So the SIIM Hackathon is not concerned with having super smooth, cool demos here, as much as we're actually concerned about, A, you had an interesting idea, and B, you can demonstrate some effort, meaningful effort that you made towards your idea. So the way I usually tell judges and participants is, it doesn't matter if someone's prototype looks like wireframes, the UI wasn't done, or maybe just doesn't look great. It also doesn't matter if the demo blows up halfway through the presentation. That's fine. Again, it's all about the merit of the idea and the fact that you made an effort towards solving that problem or improvement. We realize this is a short hackathon. It's only 28 hours, so we're not expecting finished applications that are super polished. We're just encouraging, again, collaboration and trying to advance imaging informatics forward. Okay, questions or problems? Before the hackathon, please feel free to get in touch with me. So I am the technical project manager for the SIIM Hackathon. There is my email, there's my Twitter handle. During the hackathon, or even right now, if you wanted to go on Discord, you're more than welcome to go and ask questions, ask for help. So again, we have the general channel on Discord, so that's kind of like the lobby where everyone hangs out. We have Code Heroes if you have technical specific questions. We have domain experts. again, we'll probably be adding even more channels. And also, if you form a group to tackle a project, feel free to create your own channel. This kind of gives you a space for you and your team to hang out and discuss the progression within your project. Do not forget to tag people to get their attention on Discord. For example, like if you want to tag me because you wanted to get my attention on Discord, just say @Mohanad_Hussain. Of course, everyone's username is different. Not everyone necessarily chooses to have first and last name like I do. And again, keep in mind that you've got hacks in Discord where you could tag people. So everyone tags everyone who happens to be present in that room, part of the room. Whereas here is everyone who is currently present and online within that one room. All right. And then a couple of sort of housekeeping items to keep in mind here. So we highly encourage everyone to open source your work on GitHub as much as possible. It doesn't actually have to be GitHub, but that tends to be the de facto choice. Again, if you work for a vendor and you've got weird agreements with your vendor that don't just allow you to open source code, that's fine. But in general, if there's any opportunity you can open source your code, a lot of people tend to be very modest about their code, thinking, oh, who will ever find this useful? You will be surprised. We've seen many participants in the past open source their code, and someone finds it useful one way or another, where they actually take it and extend it, or just take it and use it as an example. It tends to be pretty useful and just enriches the community as a whole. We highly encourage you to make use of open source packages. There's a long list. I'm not going to try and name everything, but you've got Cornerstone as a sort of like a nucleus of a viewer or a framework of a viewer. You've got the OHIP viewer, which is kind of more like a finished product type of medical imaging viewer. Happy library. So Happy is not just a file server. There's a library component to it that you could use server within your code to interact with Fire and easily be able to parse or create information. If you're in DICOM, something like DCM for Che is a really cool library that just allows you to consume DICOM data very easily, and so on and so forth. So the list goes on much, much longer, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. And last but not least, we love mashups. If you've got a cool idea that can, mash up, say, information from things like TCIA or Radlex or Loink, or other ideas that you have, I don't know, Amazon Alexa integration, etc., definitely on the table and definitely highly encouraged. And with that, I thank you all for your attention, and I'm more than happy to take any questions. Now, once again, this webinar will be recorded, so everyone can watch this on demand. And again, if any questions come up afterwards, please do share.
So Mohanad, there is one question, and it's just kind of asking, and I know you gave a lot of great information. It's asking, what are some of your thoughts on what first-timers might want to do beforehand? What would be like your top 3 things that you tell them to do beforehand?
Absolutely, and that's an excellent question. So I would say for the first-timers, maybe the number one thing is just make sure that you're prepared. So go get yourself a SIIM.org account, sign up for your API key, find the group portal that I mentioned, just so you kind of know where to find your way. That's all number one. And then number 2 is really just show up. You don't need to worry too much about having your own ideas or knowing the APIs too deeply. Just show up. The kickoff meeting will take care of you. We'll give you cool ideas to work on. You'll be able to bounce off your ideas of people, or maybe even join teams. And again, regardless of what your background is, you could be a resident who's looking to get their hands on technical work, or you could be the other way around, where maybe you're a technical person, IT admin or a developer who's looking to kind of enrich their knowledge on the clinical side. So yeah, in the Hackathon Kickoff, we connect these people, try and create synergies between them, and then we'll find you something to do, which is really number 3, is we will help you find that number 3, something to find to do that is meaningful. And of course, the other thing I'll also add is not everyone attends the hackathon with the purpose of competing and presenting. I mean, we highly encourage people to do it just because it's more fun. But at the same time, we do get a lot of people who are just there to learn and get their hands dirty with these APIs and these concepts. something we also very much encourage. So definitely a valid option too.
Right. And what if somebody isn't actually able to attend the hackathon this year virtually or this time around? Are they able to access the resources any other time of year?
Absolutely. So almost everything I've showed here is available 24/7. So whether it's the Hackathon group portal on SIIM.org or the actual APIs themselves, they're all online. The one component that isn't available all year round is, of course, the live access to the community. So that's just within the hackathon event. So the mentors, the main experts, these are the people that we try to gather up for the hackathon event. Now, it's not to say they're not going to answer any questions throughout the year, but they just won't be readily available for questions.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I am definitely excited to see everything that's going to come out of the hackathon this year. Very excited with all the work that you all are doing. So thank you so much, Mohamed, and we look forward to seeing everybody, June 19th.
Thank you very much. And of course, on my end, I will say that, of course, we, the Hackathon Committee, appreciate the great work that's being done by the SIIM staffs. Not to name everyone, but of course, yourself, Nikki, Bradley, Andrea, we couldn't do this without you. So we really, really, really appreciate you, all the things you do and the fact that you're always putting up with us.
Thank you. Thank you. We love working with you all. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, thank you, everybody, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. See you in a couple of weeks.